Yo! Welcome to another Untimely review. It's Scooby's last live-action movie that matters, and our first full series reviewed. Now, I already know that this movie has some things for me to look respectfully at, and while I will get my thoughts off, I assure you, they will be respectful. I'm also gonna compare this movie to the first a lot in the ending because it's a sequel, and why not? Now I think that's enough of an intro, so let's get right into the story. So major spoilers for the movie that I guarantee made me look at skin-tight suits different. We start off with the credits and see that James Gunn upgraded to a co-producer role, and the actual movie starts at the opening of the Coulsonian Criminology Museum, and now I get to talk some more about Scooby Doo lore that I didn't get into in the first movie because it never was brought up. For those of you that don't know, Scooby Doo's hometown is called Coolsville. And if we can't agree that Coolsville is second only to Boys Town as the best name of a place to live, then we can't be friends. But I digress. The gang is at the museum for their exhibit, talking about all their different exploits over the years. Fred brought multiple ascots to give to all his fans, there's Burger King product placement within the first 3 minutes of the movie, and we see that each member of the gang have their own fandom. The Shaggy and Velma fandom are tied for #1 for me. But while Fred's being interviewed, there's a mysterious old man watching in the distance. The gang is doing some more interviewing in the exhibit, and they gave Velma a fucking love interest in this movie, so I hate everything about it. And it's Seth Green, who I never had beef with before, but now I do. Both of them are nerds about syntax or something, I don't know, I was mad the whole time. But she doesn't go on a date with him because, as she puts it, mystery is my mistress. I must heed her sweet call. That is very beautiful and poetic, but I must still ask respectfully, may I knock them ankles loose? No. Okay. While the festivities carry on, they're interrupted by this CGI pterodactyl. Velma comes up with a plan, but Shaggy and Scooby mess it up, and at this point, I really don't see how they keep their jobs. As the pterodactyl ruins the night, this masked figure pops up to say that he's responsible, and then we just pick up with the cleanup crew. Velma finds this secret hatch, this scale, and the gang gets torn apart by this one media source. Also in this version, Mystery Inc. have a 70s superhero lair, which is mighty swanky. The gang all kinda take responsibility for the museum incident, but it's really just all blaming Shaggy and Scoob. While everyone else goes to their lab, how the fuck did they finance that? Shaggy and Scoob decided to act like real detectives and stop being goofy. Somehow, their lab is sophisticated enough to analyze the scale and tell that it's a real one, which I don't see how you could even do that, since I'm pretty sure only the bones of dinosaurs are left and not their scales. Velma then recaps the OG pterodactyl guy's story. We find out that he drowned, so the gang moved to his cellmate, Old Man Wickles, who was that old man mean-mugging from the audience. The gang goes to Old Man Wickles' house, which looks like the Haunted Mansion, but fake as shit, so very on brand. We get another Burger King reference. The gang get put into this contraption that should make the whole house condemned, but hey, they get out, so it's all good. Shaggy, in his bid to be more detective-y, tells the gang to split up, which means he still hasn't learned that that is a bad idea. While the gang trespass all over Wickles' mansion, we get a Sir Mix-a-Lot reference that was super dated in 2004. We see that Scooby doesn't understand what a clue even is, but they do find a clue, even though it's dated tonight, which means it could have literally been any previous day, but I'm sure the movie is gonna move past that. With Scooby and Shaggy celebrating, they get pulled up on by the Black Knight ghost. The gang reunites to fight the Black Knight, and Daphne is holding him off, and it's a legit action scene, which I was not expecting. But it ends when Velma just kicks him in his ghostly balls, and the whole gang dip out. Back in the mystery pad, Shaggy has Scoob to fake having rabies to go investigate that clue they found. And guess what? Everyone actually believes them. With that happening, Velma is using her Velma Cave technology to find that randomonium, very creative name, is the important ingredient to make monsters. Oh yeah, Mystery Inc. went from unmasking old guys with mental illnesses to fighting real monsters now. But before the gang without the Scooby brothers goes to this old mining town to find out more about randomonium, this fucking guy comes by uninvited like a creep to their house. We learn a little bit about what's keeping Velma from going on a date with Seth, and Daphne helps her, and oh my god! Think respectful thoughts, think respectful thoughts, think respectful thoughts, think respectful thoughts, think respectful thoughts! Okay, oh jeez, that's over. So we pick back up with Shaggy and Scooby having to go undercover at the faux ghost, because that's where all the guys they've unmasked hang out. So, what do they do to blend in? wear the most conspicuous outfits they can get their hands on, and immediately announce their presence. Good job, guys. They find Wickles, who starts out as a calm old man who seems repentant, and then he turns into a psycho who wastes peanuts. While Shaggy goes to the bathroom, Scoob puts on a dance routine while fucking barking, and no one says a thing about it. But when Scooby's wig and glasses fly off, everyone realizes, and they obviously all have poor vision, which is why they couldn't tell before. They get chased out of the place, and oh god, oh fuck, respectful thoughts.
Oh no!
She's
hot!
As a professional, I will press on, but my thoughts will be tainted. We find out that the rest of the costumes have been stolen by the Black Knight and Pterodactyl. Seth Green leaves Velma to go figure out what's going on like she couldn't possibly help. Daphne presses this press lady about her personal attacks on the team, and the press lady brings up that Daphne doesn't really have a distinct role in the group. But before Daphne can really defend herself, that masked guy from earlier pops up to taunt them. We see that while all that was going on, Seth Green went to the same bar that Shaggy and Scooby went to press some guy about who stole the costumes, and he is way more aggressive than we've seen him so far. He says that he was only doing it to act tough, but it seems very suspicious. The Scooby brothers tail Wickles as he goes into the old Coolsville mine, but when they lose him and try to find him again, they run into this one-eyed skeleton monster and find this elevator. The rest of the gang pull up to the mine and see Wickle talking to his investors about his idea for a summer camp. Why they're doing this at night at the location is strange to me, but I'm not a business major, so that's not my expertise. Picking up with Shaggy and Scooby on the elevator, they find this huge lab, and Scooby, being especially stupid, now licks what he thinks is lemonade and turns into this thing. Shaggy, also being stupid, just licks some random blue stuff that he thinks looks medicinal, which gives him a woman's body with his head looking super fake on top of it. I'm not saying Shaggy couldn't be a baddie, just saying don't look like it right here. Scooby turns into a legit cartoon, and they just start drinking random stuff in the fridge to get back to normal. Remember kids, if you ever become a scientist making random potions in your kitchen, make sure to properly label them. Because of all the noise, the gang go down to find them, and while they get back to normal, they blasted a hole in this thing called the Monster Hive. Wonder what's in there. Velma suspects that it's Seth Green, since he's been acting strange, and while Shaggy gets excited that they found that place, they're still making bad decisions and end up making even more monsters. Everyone gets out of the mine, but Shaggy and Scoob get separated from the group and get chased by these skeleton guys, but they meet up with the gang after some downhill sledding. The evil mask guy puts out a bounty on Mystery Inc. Prototype Bob from Monsters vs. Aliens does some tentacle shit. Gross. A journalist tries to interview a monster, and that's some solid commentary on the world right now, so I had to bring it up. While the city is just straight up getting destroyed, the gang go to their old hideout. We get a quick little flashback to when the gang was in high school, and the gang, without the Scooby Bros again, come up with a plan and they start working while the most early 2000s pop rock plays. Scoobs and Shaggy sulk outside because they think everything's their fault, and it kinda is, and it kinda isn't. But while they have a sad existential crisis, one of the monsters comes up out the water. The gang gets away from that one, but as they drive throughout the city, other monsters start chasing them. Once those guys are taken care of, they get to the old mine and Fred faces off against the Black Knight in a jousting match. Because why not? Daphne fights against living electricity and decides the best course of action is to kick it. She gets a shock to her system, and her and Fred have a little emotional heart-to-heart, and Velma gives Shaggy and Scooby the pep talk they need to finish the mission. Everyone beats their respective monster, and Velma finds this shrine to the OG Pterodactyl, and we see Seth Green is there being mad shady, and Velma, rightfully, is mad suspicious, but he says that he's there to solve the mystery. But he does save Velma's life, twice, so I guess he's cool. Shaggy and Scooby get trapped in a room with the best monster possible, the Cotton Candy Glob. So they munch on him, but before they can destroy all the monsters, the masked guy from earlier stops them. The gang play a little frisbee with the monster destroyer. Scooby does some sick grinds on a fire extinguisher and saves the day by plugging in the device. With everything done, they reveal the evil masked guy as the reporter lady that Daphne thought it was. But double twist, the reporter lady is actually the OG Pterodactyl guy. Velma and Patrick get together, and if he's good enough for her, guess he's good enough for me. And the movie ends with 2003 American Idol winner Ruben Studdard singing Shining Star while an elaborate dance number happens. Okay, now that the story's out of the way, what did I think? I really enjoyed this movie, way more than the first, and that all comes from the comedy and performances. The comedy is A1 in this movie if you like old school Scooby Doo. I laughed out loud way more times in this movie than I think any other movie I reviewed so far, and definitely more than the first movie. This movie leaned in hard with the cartoony aspects of the show, and I think it's better for it. You get the bad physics, the over-the-top reactions, and fun of the series. This really does feel like a live-action adaptation of the series because it just feels like any other Scooby Doo episode. The gang's performances all feel like they were turned up to 11 in this one. If you want a little bit more detail, I already talked about them in the previous video, which you can see here, but Fred goes full dude bro in this. Shaggy and Scooby are just goofballs, full-on knucklehead McSpazatrons, and it's great. Shaggy specifically is way more animated in this one, so I know Matthew Lillard felt even more comfortable playing himself. I love that Scooby had more to do and was more talkative, and again, he's my favorite character in the movie. Velma is even more nerdy and analytical, and respectfully, even badder, even outside of the skin-tight suit. The only character that feels the same is Daphne. They bring up that she doesn't really have any defining characteristics in the group, but nothing comes from that. At the end of the movie, she's still the most, for lack of a better word, normal, and while there's nothing wrong with that, I think that because everyone else is so out there and weird, she can come off as a little bit boring in comparison. The other four main characters aren't even really that interesting to bring up. Even with the reporter, Heather, played by Alicia Stone, she doesn't actually do much outside of reporting, and out of Wickles, Jacobo, and Patrick, she probably has the most to say, but not much that is actually interesting. This movie also has way more emotional scenes to get some more character building than the first one, and while some of them are just straight up rehashes like with Daphne, I think that these were still executed better as a whole. There's only two negative things I can even say about this movie. The first is that it over-relies on the CGI way too much. The first one had it, but it wasn't every few minutes, so it was tolerable. Every monster looks awful, and when the characters interact with them, especially the prototype Bob,
Hi there!
It looks even worse. I think that Scooby still looks great, but when he was switching forms and bodies and stuff, it did look a little weird. I mean, he's a talking dog doing things, so I guess more weird than usual. The second thing that I didn't really like is that I feel like this movie isn't really all that memorable. I mentioned this in the first video, but I knew that I really liked this movie, but I remembered the plot of the first one and just thought that it was the second. The first movie's plot is interesting, mysterious, and while it's the same basic structure of any other Scooby Doo plot, it's more iconic than this one, and I think that some part of that comes from the villain. I already mentioned that the actual villain doesn't do much, but even when they're masked up, they're just boring. Mondavarius really does feel like a villain, and when you find out that it's just Scrappy, it's an interesting change. Here, it's way more complicated since Jacobo creates this entire other persona just to get the public to turn against Mystery Inc. for no reason, and we don't even get an interesting reason why Jacobo did this again. He just hates the gang. It's just really not all that interesting, and I think that where the first movie focused on the story and then the character interactions, this movie goes in the opposite direction. But I do have some more specific questions about this movie though. Like, they said that Mystery Inc. donated all the old costumes, but like, shouldn't they be in a police lockup somewhere? Why would Mystery Inc. just have the costumes? Are you telling me that in their lair, they really had all those suits in glass like Batman? And speaking about their lair, where did they even get the money to do all this? If they're getting paid to solve mysteries, fine, but I don't see how just being mystery solvers gets you a place like this. Also, why exactly are they so famous? In the first movie, it seems like they're global detective stars, but in this one, it seems like it's more of a local thing since the media was only locally broadcast and they only focused on, oh, Coolsville hates us now. So what's the deal? I assume it's like everything that they did before these movies made them famous, but I'm also still not completely sure. Aside from that, there's just too many funny interactions in this movie that I can't not recommend watching this yourself. Aside from so many parts of the movie just looking super ugly, I think it's still worth watching. But what did you think? Was the review a scary sight or did it bring you back to a better place? Let me know what I should review next, and thanks for watching. Oh, actually, I didn't mention this before, but there's no mention of a Scooby snack in this whole thing, and that's kinda unacceptable. 2 out of 10 film.